Hey friends. I am I'm struggling with something a bit. Had a really interesting day because I connected with a friend and someone who has been a former collaborator, and we had a lovely conversation, catching up in a way. When I say I'm struggling with something, there was an element to um, there was an aspect of the last time that we did any kind of work together where a conflict arose between other people, not between myself. I mean, some conflict arose between myself and some of the other colleagues as well. But the real sort of showdown was between parties that were not me. And in looking at how those circumstances have evolved and the positions that have been taken by the people involved vis-a-vis the folks they were in conflict with, it paints a picture for me. I've now kind of touched base with everybody. I've had a chance to at least hear each side, hear all sides. And I find myself unable to disagree with any side. Everyone has a valid position. Everyone also has massive blind spots. And I feel like I have this sort of oddly privileged position of being able to see, because I've now talked to the various parties, I'm able to see where those blind spots are. Because, as is so often the case, if we really wanted to know where our blind spots are, we would ask our enemies, or at least enemies might be strong, but we would ask the people who don't agree with us, with whom we're not seeing eye to eye, with whom we may have friction, we may even have conflict. Those folks are going to have a line on where our blind spots are way more than our friends, than the people who are aligned with us, who are on the same team. And as I've now had a handful of conversations that have painted this picture for me, I suppose the unfortunate conclusion that I come to, or the unfortunate thing that I see happening, is that people are actually happier, or not happier, but they don't really want to go into that. They don't really want to go to the place where their blind spots could be revealed to them. I'm not generalizing. I'm talking about specific people, and for obvious reasons, keeping this as vague as I can, so hopefully nobody watching this can figure out who the hell I'm talking about. Because that's not the point of this. There's a dynamic here, and there's a kind of, what's showing up with, for me, or when I say where I started with, I'm struggling with something, is that I've tried in some very small ways to get some of these folks to talk to each other, simply by suggesting that they do that. That's about as much as I've done. Haven't put in a whole lot of effort. But it's also not my place to push that. So, but I think, what shows up for me on the one hand is a cautionary tale. Because I think there's an element to situations that we would rather avoid, conversations that we would rather avoid. There's a reason why we would rather avoid them. And the reason is because we know there's something that we may be confronted with and might even have to accept that we don't want to be confronted with, and we don't want to have to accept. So we avoid the conversation. Otherwise, why the hell would you avoid the conversation? There'd be nothing to fear. You might consider it a waste of time. You might be like, I don't want to go have that conversation because it's a waste of time. But that's not, but as an excuse for not facing it, that's not good enough. Right? Like there's got to be, if we're willing to actually confront and even sort of receive whatever reflection an unpleasant or potentially unpleasant conversation may have for us, then there's nothing to be afraid of. There's just something to look at. So the cautionary tale for me is beware of those conversations that I don't want to have. Because they may well have content in them, have the potential to reveal things to me that might be very valuable and very ultimately important for me to hear, important for me to receive. I guess you could flip that, and instead of it being a cautionary tale about what you lose when you avoid those conversations, you could frame that as the opportunity that those awkward conversations extend, and look at it through the lens of what do I stand to gain by submitting to a conversation that there's the ego in me, the part of me that is capable of having fear, the part of me that has a way of seeing the world, a way of seeing other people, specific people. That part of me, if it's afraid of a certain conversation, if it's not wanting to go somewhere, there's almost certainly value there. There's almost certainly something to be gained. Because that's where we can see our blind spots. Those are the places where those are the conversations that could potentially reveal to us the aspects of ourselves that we're not seeing. And I think I'm struggling with the disappointment that some folks that I'm close enough to have access to this information from them aren't willing to do that, but they're not willing to go and talk to each other. It's just a bummer. Because I'm like, I see so much potential. I see so much possibility for healing. I just came across a workshop. I have not attended the workshop, and the workshop has not started, but it's Thomas Hübl, which is a German name, H-U with the little dots, U-umlaut, B-L. He's running a workshop on trauma. It's a more elegant name than that, but trauma is in the name. And even just in his little like teaser video of what this online course is going to be about, he talks about how trauma is trauma in human beings is a manifestation of the detox pathways of individuals and of the collective. So in other words, as an individual processes trauma, not necessarily as an individual incurs trauma, but as an individual processes trauma, liberates themselves from the shackles of trauma, they're detoxing themselves and they're detoxing the world. And that just like struck me like a blinding. I've never heard that phrase before. Trauma as a detox pathway. And in some ways, that's how I've kind of always thought about it. And in that phrase, I saw my own perspective sort of like exploded. I was like, oh, that's a really good way of saying that. Because I've talked about even the experience of like getting sick. When I come through that illness, it doesn't feel like I was okay and then I got bad and then I got okay again. And when I was getting sick, I just like dipped to a lower level of functionality and then I got back to where I was before. It actually feels like I'm here. I go through something challenging, in the case of like an illness, or it's mildly traumatic, but it's physically challenging. And then I have gone up a level. Like my whole system, from my psyche to my body, has gone up a level. That's just how it feels. I don't know why it feels that way. Even with injuries that aren't fully healed, even with a surgery that I just had. So I think I was saying something kind of similar about this surgery that I've been healing from right now. I'm 1 week out today. There's this sense that the experience of it, and especially the facing into and integration of trauma, is evolution. It's a detox. It's detoxing me, but not just detoxing me from the event that happened. It's detoxing me on a much deeper level. The event is giving me the pathway to detox. And I suppose we can only really extend the invitation. You can't have the expectation that someone does this when they don't feel ready to, that someone engages in it in a way that on the basis of just knowing that it would be good for them. Like, that's not how it works. I get that. I think, and maybe this is my own sort of naivete as a healer, but it seems like there's a lot of opportunity in the world, a lot of opportunity. Once we start to see trauma and conflict in this way, opportunities everywhere. So yeah, that's kind of what showed up for me today. I also took my first shower in a week because I'd been in a hospital and they told me not to shower with my cut. Today I was allowed. It was great. Standing under hot running water, man, nothing like it. Anyway, before I digress too much, thanks for watching. I appreciate you. Have a wonderful day. I'll see you soon.